I'm Bob Kraus. I'm president of the Veterans National Recovery Center, and I'm here with Sabrina Waller. And we talked about Patch Adams last time. We still got the nose on. And we talked about this and the importance of being happy. And so we're going to start this with a little fart cushion action. But it's kind of it's an operative fart cushion. It doesn't work very well. But we're going to talk about, oh, that's how you do it. You put on tape. See, an expert, a trained comedian. Yeah, very important to have in a wartime environment. And so what we've got here is we're going to talk about, well, how did we get there and what's going on? Now, but first, where are you going with the Patch Adams thing? What is happening with that?
September, I'll be in New York for Perform the World. So yeah, we'll be talking more about the Red Nose Revolution and what does it mean to have an army of clowns during war.
An army of clowns with 24/7 migraine headaches, with suicidal situations. Sabrina has had, how many of you think of your friends have committed suicide or died since you started this in your little network of veterans?
Well, more than a handful.
More than a handful. I think we were estimating about 10. When you figure in the whole country, you lose, I think it's 22 a day. So you and your friends in your little circle, you accounted for about half of one day in the history of America. So it's a sad thing, and that's why we need humor. But when we're looking at, yeah, that's the way to keep context. Yeah, we keep context with that. And so when you were on the flat top, she was Navy, so that's why she's got my dad's old Iowa hat there. And so what happened? How did this thing happen to you? The injury.
On the flight deck, I think we laughed and giggled about sleep deprivation. So I won't talk about how I fell asleep sometimes on the flight deck, or where I would have to fall asleep. But the flight deck is a powerful experience. I don't know if I would encourage everyone to have that experience, because as we know.
Yeah, well now, we were talking about this before, Sabrina, and you said that what they did is they were, you had some show-offs, and they were doing a low-level sonic boom over the deck. Is that basically what happened?
My brain remembers that it was a morale booster, and they would show us what we were doing on the other side.
Okay, so it was the fighters would take off, and they would go high speed across the decks. Well, if you're on the flat, on that top surface, that is just like a moving explosion. And so Sabrina got caught in the explosion, basically. Now, what did that explosion do inside your head?
I remember ringing in the ears, and just not wanting to ever go through that experience again. And they did it a couple times.
Mm-hmm. And so, but you had some problems because the Kosovo War was a few years ago, and and they got increasingly worse. And then in about you finally insisted that the VA give you an MRI. Now, when was that?
2011.
Now, that'd be a
there was an MRI, an MRA, and an MRV, and a CT scan. Okay,
so these are all brain electromagnetic checks that they do. A magnetic resonance imaging is one of them, and they've got a bunch of other alphabets like that they use. So, what did you notice in your brain, and how did you find out?
I was one of the nerdy Navy veterans, and I read the progress notes, and I'm like, what are they saying about my brain? And then I read that there was a partial empty cella in a portion of a very important gland, the pituitary gland, and it kind of was dismissed. It wasn't kind of dismissed. It was dismissed until I pushed forward and learned to advocate for myself.
So what occurred basically is the pituitary gland sits right about here. If I took Sabrina's hair and I moved it back like this, and I put my finger right at the base of her spine and went in about maybe an inch or two, I'd find the pituitary gland, and it sits in a little cup in the bone up there. And the explosion caused the pituitary gland to be compressed to the bottom of the cella, which is a little bone structure that sits in. So the explosion squashed her pituitary gland. Well, what happens when you squash your pituitary gland? That sounds like kind of, I've squashed bugs.
The VA says it's nothing to worry about.
It's nothing to worry about, but it is obviously much more important than that, and other information you find shows that. Is that right?
Yes, I was able to find another veteran on Twitter that is actually getting treatment for empty cella syndrome. So.
Okay, well, we need to document that because that's really important for your treatment. So that was 2011, and how long did it take you to convince the VA to find you a headache specialist to get through this problem?
This year, 2018.
2018.
I was actually able to see the headache specialist, except she prescribed me antidepressant, and I started to get heart issues again. And when I called her, she said, although she was the headache specialist, she doesn't deal with the heart.
Oh my goodness. So we had a period where Sabrina was suffering for, 7 years with 24/7 migraines, where she would take medications, but they wouldn't always work. So she would self-medicate occasionally. But the VA, now we have a situation where there's actually a professional magazine called the National Headache Foundation. And this is their magazine, Head Vice. And I'm not an expert on this, but Sabrina subscribes to this. And she told me there's 100 different types of headaches that are migraines. And because she has migraine disease, she has the majority of them, if not all of them. And in spite of this, how many headache specialists are there? There must be hundreds in the VA, aren't there? Because of this.
There are no headache specialists within the VA systems
that
I go to, and I was informed there are no headache specialists.
There are no headache specialists in the United States in the Veterans Administration healthcare system. Isn't that incredible? Because we have PTSD people that have headaches, traumatic brain injury, like Sabrina, they have headaches. There are other injuries that involve headaches. They're often associated with fibromyalgia, which you have also. Is that correct?
I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia.
Yeah, so we've got all these things, and we've got a vast vacuum and a complete specialty area that there have been reports that the people coming back from Iraq have twice as many migraines. Is that correct? Is that what you told me? Where did you find that out?
That was from the National Headache Foundation. So there's an email place. They have an actual website that has been specifically for military headache issues.
Yeah, yeah. So the private sector with the National Headache Foundation is all over this, and the VA is going ho hum. Is that correct? Is that what's going on?
Unfortunately.
That is really tough. So what we need to do, I guess, is just we need to contact the VA, if you're out there and listening. We need to talk to our friends in Congress, and we need to ask them that what's going on here? Why can't there be more headache specialists, especially when you have a nearly 100% spike in migraine headaches amongst Iraq vets coming back? Is that true? Mm-hmm. Well, I guess that's what the message is today. Be happy with our friend here with the rubber nose, but also have a great day. We're with you, and you call your congressman. Thanks a lot. Bye now.